And welcome everybody to the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this fine Monday. Now, obviously, some of you know me from the GSMC Baseball Podcast, but now we have officially launched the Football Podcast. So this will be in the 11 a.m. Eastern Time time slot, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Will be the live show, and then at 12:30 at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, I will record the Patreon for this episode. So that will be Monday through Friday. We'll have the social posts. Friday will be the football podcast first, and then I will have the baseball podcast shortly after that. So the baseball podcast is now just going to be on Fridays, but there will be social posts every single day during the week for both this show and that show as well. But it's great to have you guys here to tune in and watch. Really excited to get started. We have a lot to talk about here on this Monday, of course. But before we get into that, I just want to remind everybody to donate or tip and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show. And, of course, you can see that on the bottom of the ticker there. And for bonus coverage materials that are not covered on this broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and look up GSMC Sports Network, and that's where you can find all the exclusive content for my podcasts as well as the other podcasts as well on the GSMC Sports Network. The fantasy football one, the college football, and the basketball podcast. So with that, let's get right into what we're going to talk about. So, of course, as you can see on the bottom here, the first segment, we're going to talk about the game from last night between the Cowboys and the 49ers. And I tried to be nice with how I titled it. It could have been a lot. I could have titled it something worse, but I'm trying to be nice here. The 49ers winning 42-10 over the Cowboys. So that's what we'll get into to start off the show. Then in the second part of the show, we are going to recap the games from the early window. We'll also talk about the Thursday night game as well between the Bears and the Commanders, because I have some thoughts on that. Then in the third part of the show, we'll recap the games from the late window. And so there were, I think, 3 late afternoon games. And then we will get into previewing the Monday night game between the Packers and the Raiders in Las Vegas tonight. So that's the rundown for today's show. So let's get into the first part of the show, which is talking about last night's game between the 49ers and the Cowboys. And there's a lot to talk about here. Obviously, the last 2 seasons, the 49ers have ended the Cowboys season. They defeated them in the wild card round in 2021, and they defeated them in the divisional round in 2022 last year. And last year's game, the final score, I believe, was 19-12. So there wasn't a lot of scoring. So going into this game, obviously, this was a big game for the Cowboys because, listen, Cowboys win last night. They put the rest of the league on notice that we're legit because, the first 4 weeks of the season, your 3 wins are against the Giants, the Jets, and the Patriots. All blowout wins pretty much. And your 1 loss is against the Arizona Cardinals, who are rebuilding or who are trying to tank. And the Cowboys did not show up last night. They just didn't. The first drive of the game, Niners go right down the field and score. George Kittle gets his, I believe that was his first touchdown of the season. And he ended up having 2 more after that. And the Cowboys just could not do anything. They had 1 good drive, and that was the touchdown to Turpin. And that made it 21-10. But, on the first drive, 7 plays, 75 yards. 3 yards with McCaffrey, 9 yards to Ayuk, 4 to McCaffrey, 11 to Ayuk. Then there was a penalty, 4 more to Debo, 5 more to McCaffrey, and then a 19-yard touchdown to George Kittle, and that put them up 7-0. And, Cowboys' first 3 possessions, punt, fumble, And then actually the Niners fumbled right after that. So that was, yeah. And I have Tony Pollard and McCaffrey as my 2 running backs in one of my leagues. So that was, I mean, I still ended up winning the matchup, but that was annoying. Then the Cowboys punted again. Niners got another touchdown. This is now in the second quarter. And then they actually did put up a good drive. 11 plays, 78 yards. It was 5.5 minutes. It was a solid drive by the Cowboys. So, that gets them, now they're down 11, or actually, no, they're down 7 at that point. I thought it was 21 to whatever. But then the Niners, they go down the field, 9 plays, 75 yards. They score a touchdown. So it's 21-7 at that point. Then the Cowboys punted again. But yeah, and then they opened up the second half with a field goal. So yeah, then they were down 21-10. But then the Niners scored another touchdown. And I think that was that the third Kittle touchdown? Yes, that was the third Kittle touchdown. And then Juszczyk had a touchdown as well. I mean, the Cowboys just were overwhelmed, and Dak Prescott ended up having 3 interceptions on the night, 14-24, 153 yards, and a touchdown to go along with that. Cowboys only ran the ball for 57 yards. Their leading receiver was CeeDee Lamb, which is expected. He had 49 receiving yards. And then on the other side, Brock Purdy was just flawless last night. 17-24, 252 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. 49ers ran for 170 yards last night. Jordan Mason had a touchdown. McCaffrey, of course, had a touchdown as well. George Kittle had 3 touchdowns. He was their leading receiver with 67 yards. Ayuk had 58. Debo had 55. Christian McCaffrey ended up not having a monster game, and the Cowboys still lost by 32 points. And there were a lot of injuries last night. Cowboys did lose some guys. Leighton Vander Esch was one of them. Obviously, they're missing Trayvon Diggs, who's out for the season with an ACL injury. So, but they just couldn't get anything going, the Cowboys. I mean, offensively and defensively, the 49ers did whatever they wanted. And the Cowboys had no answers. And where do the Cowboys now sit after this loss? Well, listen, they're going to be I think they'll still be a playoff team, of course, but they're a team that's, in my opinion, not to be taken seriously. In my opinion, when you're talking about contenders, especially in the NFC, I don't think the Cowboys fall under that category. I think they obviously are a playoff contender, and they'll get in as a wild card, but I don't see them doing anything. And more specifically, because of who's their quarterback, Dak Prescott. I was never a Dak Prescott believer from his first snap in the NFL back in 2016 when he inherited a great offensive line. You had Dez Bryant to throw to at the time, was a top receiver. He had Ezekiel Elliott, who they drafted, who was very good his first season as well. They ended up being the 1 seed that year, but I just was never a believer that Dak Prescott was all that. I just, for me, I think he's a solid quarterback, but I don't look at him as an elite quarterback. I don't see him as a guy that, is going to bring out the best in you. I think you need to bring the best out in him. And yesterday, more turnovers against this team. Listen, this is who you need to beat. This is who's going to stand in your way of getting to where you want to go. And they did not deliver. And their defense, it looked like the defense from, the COVID season, 2020. It looked like those defenses. They couldn't get any stops. Guys are running wide open. They do that double reverse play, and Kittle runs free. He scores his second touchdown. That tells you all you need to know. And listen, I admit, those first couple weeks, I was like, Dallas does look really good. But again, look at the level of competition that they were going against. Some of the worst teams in football they beat. 40-0 against the Giants. I think it was 38 or 35-3 over the Patriots. And then you beat the Jets, I think it was like 31-10. And you lost to the Cardinals, who are trying to tank. So the Cowboys, to me, they showed who they are. They're a playoff team, but they're not of the elite teams. They're just not. And, part of it you could say is they're dealing with injuries, but everybody deals with injuries. But it comes down to who's your quarterback. And Dak Prescott is your quarterback, and he's not going to get you to a Super Bowl. He just isn't. So, but on the other side, Brock Purdy's legit. And listen, people could say he's a system quarterback, and look, you put him on like the Giants or you put him on the Patriots, and is he going to be? No, definitely not. But he makes the throws, he's accurate, and he doesn't turn the ball over. I mean, their turnover last night was because McCaffrey fumbled. I mean, when do you see that happening? Not often. And you know what? He's doing things with this offense that, and we were talking about this last night in my group chat with my friends. He's doing things with this offense that, no 49ers quarterback under Kyle Shanahan has been able to do. He's operating the offense better than Trey Lance. And you know what? Yeah, he's operating the offense better than Jimmy Garoppolo is. And he has, and listen, outside of the playoff game against the Eagles, which he got injured, he hasn't lost a game. Has not lost a game. Now, eventually, I think the league will catch up to him, and he's going to have to make adjustments. And that happens to everybody. But right now, how he's playing, I mean, right now he looks like an MVP candidate, too. So, and listen, there's still going to be debates. I mean, listen, the Niners get McCaffrey. I mean, you got Deebo Samuel, Kittle, Ayuk, that offensive line. I mean, Trent Williams, I mean, I was listening to the Cowboys broadcast last night. Micah Parsons was frustrated the whole night because Trent Williams just shutting him down. I mean, they got everything. They really don't have any flaws to their team. I would say, I mean, their linebackers, their front seven in general, I mean, is the best in football. If you want to say like their back end might be their weakness, I mean, I guess that would probably be one of their weaknesses. If you want to talk about their secondary. But guess what? They have a great front seven that, listen, it's not going to, you don't have to cover guys for that long. Right now, the 49ers look like the best team in the NFL. They're the team to beat. And I want to see how they play. I want to see how them and the Eagles play against each other. I want to see Brock Purdy healthy against the Eagles because they play each other late in the year. I want to see how that matchup goes. Because you know what? The Eagles, I think, are a little vulnerable this year. Hurts is still playing really well. But I want to see how these teams play each other when they're both healthy. And that'll determine really, I mean, obviously the playoffs are different, but, that'll give me a clearer picture on, how they stack up. Now, when the Niners actually have a quarterback playing, and they don't have Christian McCaffrey throwing passes in the NFC Championship game. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to this first segment. Of course, the Cowboys got to figure some stuff out after that because that's definitely a really disappointing loss for them. And the Niners, they just keep rolling. So, but that's it when we talk about the first segment. So in the second segment, we're going to recap the games from the early window. I'll give my thoughts on them. And, that will be the second part of the show when we return. So stick around, and we will be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.